As the Jimmy Butler trade saga continues, one sentiment growing throughout the NBA community is that Tom Thibodeau and the rest of the T-Wolves front office is simply asking for too much for Jimmy G buckets, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Let's compare Jimmy Butler's situation to other comparable situations that have gone down in the last 2 seasons here in the NBA, Kawhi Leonard's and Paul George. Paul George demanded a trade in the 2017 offseason after being swept in the playoffs by LeBron James' Cleveland Cavaliers. George, with 1 year left on his contract, informed the Pacers that he was going to sign with the LA Lakers at the end of the season, leaving the Pacers with 2 options. Keep PG and hope that he changes his mind, eventually losing him for nothing, or trade him and try and get an appropriate return for a player of his caliber. At this point, it seemed like the Pacers had no leverage, sort of how it seems with the Jimmy Butler situation. And it also didn't seem like there was anyone the Pacers could trade with other than the LA Lakers. But then bam, out of nowhere the Pacers traded PG-13 to the Thunder for Victor Oladipo, a 25-year-old just 4 years removed from being the number 2 overall pick, and Domantas Sabonis, another lottery pick who is just about to enter his sophomore season. This is one situation where, even though it seemed that the Pacers didn't have any leverage in a trade, they still got 2 amazing young prospects for a disgruntled superstar. The other situation comparable to the one Minnesota's going through is the Kawhi Leonard scenario that caught the entire NBA community off guard last season. Leonard essentially sat out the entire year trying to force his way for the Spurs to trade him again to the LA Lakers. Over the offseason, it seemed as if the Spurs had no leverage. They had a superstar who it seemed was willing to sit out an entire season if he was not traded to either the Lakers or the Clippers, but we all know how the story ended. Leonard was eventually traded for a superstar in his own right, DeMar DeRozan, and a great young prospect in Jakob Poeltl. Here are 2 situations where elite two-way wings wanted to be traded just to 1 or 2 spots where their team seemed to have no leverage, but in both these situations, the Pacers and the Spurs received more than adequate compensation for their players. Now let's look at the situation surrounding Jimmy G buckets. Jimmy's original list of places he wanted to be traded to included 3 teams, the Nets, the Knicks, or the Clippers, but has grown to even larger, including the Rockets and the Heat, compared to PG demanding 1 team and Kawhi demanding 2 teams. Jimmy's list of potential suitors is at least twice the size of those other players mentioned, which, in theory, should open up the door for more trade opportunities. Another thing to mention is, unlike with the situation surrounding Kawhi Leonard, I don't think there's any chance that Jimmy sits out this season, as we've seen go down through the first week of the 2018 NBA season. Jimmy's max contract is less of a sure thing due to his age and history not getting along with teammates, and Jimmy is simply too big of a competitor to sit out an entire season like Leonard did. So that means that the T-Wolves aren't in a situation they absolutely need to get rid of Jimmy Butler, because even if it's going to be ugly, this T-Wolves team is going to be significantly better if Jimmy Butler suits up, rather than if they were to just trade him for any old player. Even a player like Andrew Wiggins, who all signs seems to point to him hating Jimmy Butler, admitted that Jimmy's a guy that you want on your team when the ball is tipped up in the air. Now I'm going to show you the offers the T-Wolves have turned down in comparison to the deals that the Pacers and the Spurs received for PG and the Claw. According to ESPN's Mark Stein, the T-Wolves turned down an offer of Josh Richardson and a protected first-round pick for Jimmy Butler. J. Rich is a nice player, but he's definitely no Oladipo or DeRozan, and a protected first-rounder? You have to be kidding. Now, if the Heat would have thrown another good young prospect, say Bam Adebayo, or an established vet, say Dragic or Whiteside, the deal would have been more comparable to those 2 that Indy and San Antonio received. But as it stands, this trade is incredibly one-sided in favor of Miami. Another rumor surrounding the trades is that the Rockets are trying to get a deal centered around 6-man Eric Gordon, but are unwilling to include PJ Tucker in the trade. And the question I ask is, who else can the Rockets offer? Because Eric Gordon is not nearly worth Jimmy Butler, and you'd have to think right off the bat that CP3, Capella, and Harden are off limits, and the Rockets can't trade Melo, Marquise Chris, Brandon Knight, James Ennis, or Michael Carter-Williams in a trade for at least 60 days because they were just signed to a contract. So who else does that leave for a trade? Zuki, Gerald Green? Neither of that is enough for a guy like Jimmy Butler. Like in the situations with Kawhi and PG, some team is going to have to step up and make a genuine offer because, like I said, Jimmy Butler is too big of a competitor to just not play. He's going to suit up, and once that ball is tipped, he's going to play harder than just about anybody on the floor, and from an organizational standpoint, getting 1 more season of that, 1 more season of Jimmy pushing Cat and Wiggins is better than simply getting shafted on a trade. So Pat Riley can stop calling Thibs a motherfucker for asking for too much for Jimmy, because Jimmy should demand a lot. And before I end this video, I do want to make a point. I know there are going to be some people that come out and say Jimmy isn't nearly as good as PG or Kawhi, but you just have to look at the stats. Last season, the on-off net rating that Jimmy made for the T-Wolves was staggering. When Jimmy played, the Wolves' offensive rating raised by over 6 points, and their defensive rating was 7.2 points better, making Jimmy's overall net rating difference an insane 13.2 points per 100 possessions. Like Jimmy said so eloquently in his first practice back with the T-Wolves, "You fucking need me." And ain't that the truth? Jimmy Butler's 8.9 individual win shares last season was almost 2 more than PG-13's 7.1 win shares in his last season in Indy, despite Butler playing 16 less games than Paul George. And while Kawhi Leonard was at his peak 2 seasons ago, it has been over 1 year since we saw the Claw that finished third in MVP voting. And I'm not saying the T-Wolves should get this same level of haul that the Spurs got for Kawhi, but it needs to be closer than simply getting Josh Richardson or Eric Gordon. While it may seem crazy to keep this madhouse in Minnesota, I think it's the best thing that the T-Wolves can do for their franchise until someone steps up with a genuine offer. Also, just think about it. Will the Rockets' offer of Eric Gordon for Jimmy Butler ever be off the table? No. In fact, that offer will only be better in 2 months when the Rockets can trade Marquise Chris, Brandon Knight, or Carter Williams. Will the Heat's offer of Josh Richardson for Jimmy Butler ever be off the table? No. So what's the rush for the Timberwolves? If they can pull off either of these trades at the deadline in January, it's better to stand pat and hope that a better offer comes in by that time. And if the new year comes along and nothing else has materialized, then it might be time to trade Jimmy. If you guys disagree with me, I'd like to know in the comments below what trade offers the T-Wolves should have accepted already, or if you have any suggestions on a trade offer that they can accept in the future. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I'm the Flying Chubs, and I hope you enjoyed the content. I'm going to keep working on cranking out NBA videos, especially now that the season is finally back. And if you like what I'm doing here, please like and subscribe. But either way, I'm happy you guys gave me a listen.
And some MVP chants going here for Jimmy Butler tonight. We've had the full assortment.
The full gambit.
Yes.
Yes, we got boos, we got MVP chants.